Good evening. My name is Andrew Grantham, and although I have not yet met you, Professor Taggart, looking forward hopefully to do that later this month during the NLS. So I'm going to talk about the article that was written by the FTC in 1996, discussing the different myths. And overall, I thought it was a pretty interesting article, especially for its time. It's been almost 20 years since that speech was given, and a lot of the same issues are still prevalent today, even in the blog post that I cited for the discussion in November of 2014. So, those are some of the factors I'm going to get into. I was going to address the myths number 7 and 9 specifically. 7 dealt with the concept that dietary supplements are not regulated, and number 9 that no rules apply to advertising on the internet. So, the blog post I found on Huffington Post was by Mr. Rob Harlson, and he's the executive director at trustandads.org. And some of the points that he was making is that the weight loss ads in particular, it's still an issue online where the people who are running these corporations or trying to sell weight loss supplements are still really bending and testing the limits of what is acceptable. And Mr. Harlson had actually just finished testifying to the Senate on the advertising that was done by Mr. Mehmet Oz. He had a television show. I'm not familiar with it, but apparently his show would advertise separate dietary supplements. And a lot of these were the kinds that would contrive and get people to look for an easy way out other than diet and regular exercise, which clearly Mr. Harlson believes is the most effective method, and not these other dietary supplements. So, some I think though that speaks a lot about human nature, and that a lot of the times we do look for an easy way out. And I know that's particularly true with me. If I can find an easier way to do something, that's considered wiser or more profitable. And that can get the better of us a lot of times, especially when we are questioning our motives. I know that James says in his first chapter that we are tempted by our own desires when we're tempted to sin. And I'm not trying to make a correlation that these dietary supplements are sin themselves, but just to establish the idea that we are tempted, and that these advertising companies know that. It makes us easy prey to be able to give us something that seems fantastic and too good to be true. In many ways, that's the same with the gospel. We have a truth that seems far too good to be true, and it builds a lot of skepticism because a lot of people might think there's no way this is real. So that same healthy skepticism would actually help you from being ripped off by these ad companies. So that was an interesting dichotomy that I was thinking about as I was reading about the different myths and also the blog post. But Mr. Harlson came up with this one stat I want to bring out, that in the last year and a half, so I guess from 2013 early in that year to 2014 when he was writing the article, that companies like Google, Facebook, AOL, Yahoo had been taking a lead to try to deny these different ads, had rejected over 2.5 million ads in that year and a half time frame. And I thought that was very interesting because these companies have realized that when an internet user is taken advantage of, it actually changes their habits in the way that they use the internet, and they'll be less inclined to make purchases and to use commerce and trust and listen to ads that are on the internet. So a lot of the profits for these companies, the big ones like Google and Amazon and Facebook, come from, maybe not Amazon, but those other ones, come from their ability to make revenue from advertising. So if the advertising isn't being effective, then they're not going to be able to bring in income as corporations, and so they have a vested interest just because of the way that commerce works on the internet to be able to police it. So those are my two main takeaways from for this assignment.